Hey guys, welcome back to In The Endrows, the podcast where we talk to farmers and modders alike. Today I have a very special and somewhat different guest from who I normally have. It's Ola Haldor. Say hi.
Hello. What's up?
Hey, so really great to talk to you. You're a little different from the people I normally talk to for a couple of reasons. First off, I don't talk to as many mappers as I do regular modders. And secondly, you are not American, are you?
No, I am full-blooded Norwegian.
Very nice. What region of Norway are you from?
I'm from just about the middle. If you bring up a map and look for Trondheim, that's sort of the major city in the area.
Mm.
And the farm I grew up on is just about an hour south of there. So very, very farmlands in between valleys and mountains.
All right, yeah, I'm looking it up right now. Trondheim. So it's on the northern side,
Yeah,
right?
well, yeah,
Okay,
it's
it's
on the
western.
middle.
Yeah, I see. Okay. It's sort of in the middle, sort of on the well, Trondheim is right on the ocean, it looks like, right? Right next to the Norwegian
Yeah, yeah,
Sea.
absolutely.
Oh, very cool. Okay. Um, so you've lived in Norway your whole life, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Um,
I've barely been abroad really. Not that I don't want to travel, I just haven't had the opportunity to.
right. That's cool. So your family's from around there. Did you? I don't know if I heard you say this. I'm sorry. Does your family do any farming or anything like that?
Yeah, actually, I grew up on a farm. So my father is educated as a farmer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the English term, but like agronomics or something.
That sounds about right.
So he knows how to handle the earth and soil and grass and grow things.
Right.
So he's been living on that farm for all his life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so he's still living there.
Awesome. So what kind of farming do you do up there in Norway? What kind of stuff will you see around Norway or around your farm specifically?
In Norway entirely, I think you get a lot of different things. I can't speak for everything, but I know there's a lot of grains like wheat, oat, barley. But where I come from, there's a lot of just simply grass because everyone's doing milk production.
Mm.
And those who don't often combine um, grains and forestry.
Oh, interesting. So there's actually a lot of dairy up there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's dare I say like 80% at least. Like it's a lot.
Wow. See, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah,
So so
they bring food to the people,
mhm.
basically.
So you do a lot of grass for hay and silage, probably, right? For feed,
Yeah,
animal feed.
yeah.
That makes sense. What kind? Okay, so for an American like me that grew up in the Midwest, I'm used to very, very large, very, very flat fields with an occasional hill here and there. But I get the sort of feeling that that's not really what Norwegian farming is like.
Oh no. Well, you get actually in the area I live now,
Mm-hmm.
there's only like rolling hills all over. You have to if you want to see the mountains from where I live, it should be a completely clear day. But you see rolling hills with grains, all sorts of grains and canola and such. But where I grew up, it was in a very tight valley. So the farm I grew up on was just snug into the side of the valley and looking across to the other side of the river and to the other side of the valley. It was maybe 2.5 kilometers. So it was really tight.
Huh.
So the horizon was filled with mountain, basically.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I guess I've gone west and seen the Rockies, and you can look in one direction, you can see the Colorado, the the Colorado Rockies and this sort of Rocky Mountain range, but being somewhere where you're in a very steep valley surrounded by mountains, that's not something I'm used to being around. That's not something you see a lot. That's really cool. And Norway has a lot of those, don't they?
Yeah. The most iconic things are the fjords.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a lot of fishing there as well, but there are farmers in the fjords where there's possible, and it's really fascinating to see how they, uh, if I can say so, dare to farm the lands because it's really steep, and
Right.
I wouldn't dare to drive there with a tractor and a baler or something. They got balls of steel.
Wow. Okay. So can you explain exactly what you mean when you say a fjord? It's a word you hear a lot. I know of the Norwegian breed of horse they're called the fjords, but can you
Yeah, yeah.
explain exactly what you mean by a fjord for people that might not
Well,
know?
I don't know the official term for it, but in my own words, it's a valley with ocean water or like a big lake in it. So at the
Okay.
bottom you have water, so you can either sail or drive a boat or whatever.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you ever go to somewhere on the west coast of Norway,
Mhm.
you'll see nothing but fjords.
I see that. I'm looking actually I pulled up a map just so I can kind of understand. I'm looking right now. There's a lot of ocean that looks like little fingers reaching into the land, and there's all sorts of valleys around them. Very
Yes,
very steep
correct.
very
Yeah.
quickly around them. Wow. Okay, that's kind of cool. So you get a lot of hillside farming, a lot of, ballsy driving, trying to.
Yeah, it's it's completely different to what I grew up with as well, but it's really fascinating.
Right. Wow, okay, that's really cool. So you've got a lot of grains, a lot of dairy. Have you obviously I think fishing is a big part of the Norwegian economy, right?
Yeah. I'm not too familiar with fishing, but I get it like they're sort of farms as well because they have these huge nets or what you want to call it. So
Mhm.
they have salmon and what you cod, etc.
Right.
Um, I think they do most cod fishing out in the wild though, uh, when there's a rough sea and you get all that fisherman rough sea. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you
So,
can imagine that look.
oh yeah, for sure. It's cold water too. It's cold ocean.
Yeah, it's dangerously cold.
Mhm.
It's nothing for me. I'm not an ocean kind of guy.
Fair enough. So you've grown up in Norway, you've grown up around farming, your family has done it. How did you find your way to Farming Simulator though?
Oh, I think it was back. How old is Farming Sim really? Because
Well,
I think the first one I tried was 2011,
okay.
and it was a friend of mine who introduced it to me. He said, "Oh, it's got multiplayer, and we really gotta try it." And okay, we both of us bought it, and we back then we had LAN parties.
Mm.
So I brought my computer to his place. We played all weekend, and I'm not gonna say I was hooked because it wasn't as polished as games back then, even back then, if I can
Mhm.
say that.
Yeah.
Um, but it had something like I got interested at least.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, for sure. I think Farming Simulator, I've talked with other people about this. It goes back to probably 2006, 2007. The first
Oh
official
wow, was
release
it
was.
that old?
Yeah, so the first official release I think was Farming Simulator 2008. I remember is the first time you could really probably play that game. 2007, 2008. So, yeah, you've been around a while, probably about 3 years after it really started, FS11. So,
Wow.
yeah, no, you're a veteran for sure. You qualify. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. My let's say sign up maybe a veteran, but I have nowhere near the hours as my friends, and I see a lot of others do. Um,
Okay.
I've been mostly like playing occasionally. I'm super casual about farming sim. Um, until a couple of years ago when I started looking into what does it take to make a mod.
Right. So you played Farming Simulator casually for a few years, and then you kind of did the same thing all sort of modders or mappers do. They eventually transition into starting to create content for the game. What was the trigger for that for you, and when did you start doing that?
Well, I've always been interested in making stuff for other games as well, either be it maps or a trailer or a train or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So the trigger for me to jump into modding for farming sim was I was unemployed after a couple of years at an animation studio,
Oh, okay.
and I thought, perhaps I should really check this thing out. What can I do, and how hard is it really to make a map? I mean, I've made other maps in other games.
Yeah.
Um, so I talked to my friends who live in Rennebu, and I sort of well, I presented an idea that wouldn't it be fun to play farming sim on your own real farm? And they were all triggered and fired up and yeah, sure, you should really do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I started looking into it, started opening the default maps and playing around and like, okay, this isn't so bad. But I had no idea the amount of work it would take to to make my own
Yeah.
completely from scratch.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. So I caught there that you're a professional in this industry more or less. You actually have experience doing that as a career.
Yeah, I've always done 3D since my early teens, just for hobby, just for tinkering around. What does it take to make an animation or a character or a car, make
Mm-hmm.
something move?
Yeah.
And then I brought that slowly into work. My background is video production, so
Okay.
you occasionally get to use 3D for motion graphics. Um, but then suddenly the video business here collapsed sort of overnight.
Oh.
And I thought, okay, perhaps I should try to get into this 3D thing for real, make it a living.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I was 28 years old then, and I went back to school. Took 1 year of school, studied real hard, specifically for 3D,
Mm-hmm.
and I got a break where a studio came in and presented, "Hey, this is us. We are doing this and that. We are looking for 3 interns." And I signed up, had a chat, and there we go. That's that's me. I ended up being there for 3.5 years, and I really learned a lot about production and how to make big scale animation, how to be on a team and cooperate and step off your high horse and like take criticism for what it is and not be too proud about it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I've learned the wrong way for 10 years. And then I got 3 years of really, really good, call it education while working. And it was great. So I've learned a lot of the good ways of doing 3D.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's sort of what I still do in combination with video as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool.
As-
I haven't have yet to talk to a person that actually has experience in sort of the industry that transitioned into this. So I gotta ask, from the perspective of somebody that has experience in the industry, experience working in different things, what is modding and editing things in Farming Simulator like compared to other things? Is it easier? Is it more difficult? Is it weird? Is it fast? Is it slow? How does that workflow? How does that sort of compare to other things?
Oh, that's very good questions. First of all, I think modding in general, regardless of games, it is way more technical than you'd expect. Especially if you're just looking to say make a tractor or a vehicle of any sorts, a trailer, whatever, let alone a map. Like you need to know all these things that goes into scripting and XML and coding. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's areas I've seldom been into. My brain just doesn't work that way. I'm a visual guy, so I feel confident making things in 3D or 2D, and off it goes.
Mm-hmm.
So the technical aspect of making a mod in general is tenfold harder than working at a 3D animation studio.
Huh.
Because at an animation studio, you have specific tasks. Like someone is really good at making in-house tools. They script and code whatever you need. You can request things, and the day after or a week after, the tool is done. Right? You only had to have the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And at an animation studio, you have tasks lined up for you. So you just need to get to work, open the task list, and see, okay, that's what I'm doing today. Well, with modding, you have no task unless you set out to plan really thoroughly for
Right.
yourself.
You have,
So
yeah.
when I'm making this map, I'm all over the place. Like one day I'm working on this farm, the next day I'm working on roads. The next day after that, I may be working on roads signs or road barriers.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also for me to break up a little, so I don't get into like a monotonous track where I do only one thing for 5 months, because I'd be crazy if I did that. I'd go nuts.
Right. So yeah, you have to know the whole process from top to bottom when you're doing this, because there's nobody that's like, oh, I can whip together a 3D model really fast, or oh, I can rig this really fast. You have to do everything yourself.
Yeah, unless you set out to build a team of others, but that's really hard too because they have no incentive in working on your project unless they are thoroughly interested in it and seeing it come to life.
Right.
For the last, I don't know, last year perhaps, I've tried to connect with people to help me model, because I've figured I have maybe 120 buildings, unique buildings that I really want to
Yeah.
place in the map.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like um, a rough estimate, like one building can take up to 10, 12 hours to create. That's
Yeah.
one building, because
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be as good as possible with windows and doors, and the textures need to fit and look sort of like the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I want the scale to feel correct as well. That's where all the hours goes. So connecting with people that are like-minded, that's really hard in the first place. But also who has interest in your project. That's like in a completely different league.
Right. Because the only way to get somebody to work with you is you're either paying them or they have just as much passion for it as you. And it's really hard to find somebody that cares the exact same amount about everything you're doing and all the little details in the entire project as you do. It's
Yeah,
just difficult
that's
to
that's my
connect that
notion
way.
as well.
Yeah. So speaking of, you kind of mentioned it, what you've been working on. What you're kind of known for right now is this amazing map that you've been working on. I honestly hadn't heard of it because I'm very in tune with sort of the North American farming simulator community, but I've been reaching out and this kind of got brought to my attention. I looked at a map of it. It's incredible. Which what you're doing is gorgeous. This entire map that you're making. Would you share a little bit about that? What it's called and where it's based on, and what kind of sets it apart?
Yeah. Well, your words are too kind, I feel, because, uh, well, it's very fun to hear that you are amazed by it already because I don't feel it's like done for presentation, like a thorough presentation, but
Right.
I'm dropping the little tiny bits now and then. The map is located around the area where I grew up, in Rennebu, which is in the middle of Norway. Um, it is the area is covered by mountains. There's hardly any trees above the tree line. Like, well, that's a given, but the tree line ends very abrupt. So
Hmm.
at the top there's like highlands, mountainous, brushy terrain. Down in the valley um, there's a really lush feeling to it. Like if you've seen Lord of the Rings or something,
Hmm.
the terrain there might remind you of Rennebu somehow, because it's these really nice fluffy birch trees, and you have these conifers, and yeah, you have so many options, except just farming. The area is a lot larger than I would really like to to like it to be,
Yeah.
because I started out like, okay, the default size of the map in Farming Sim is, I think it's 2 by 2 kilometers,
Hmm.
and that's not really big, but for Farming Sim it's big enough, sort
Hmm.
of. But I think it's a technical aspect to it as well, because working on a map of this size and this type of terrain is just insane. There's so many pitfalls and things that can go wrong.
Yeah.
So it really started out, okay, what can I fit within 2 by 2 kilometers? Okay, I can fit my farm, where I grew up. I can fit the farm with one of my friends, but not the other one. Okay, and there's no place to sell the grain, and there's no place to bring lumber. So there are actually two places in real life where you can sell lumber or bring the lumber and grain, which is a mill. So how big does it have to be to expand to that? Okay, 4 by 4 kilometers. Perfect. But no, the bridge that crosses over the river is just outside the 4 by 4 kilometer boundary. So my next step was 8 by 8. And that's where I'm at today. Um, so I kept expanding and expanding.
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, it's sort of a two-edged sword. You kind of really want to be um, effortless to make a map,
Yeah.
and the smaller the map is, the less effort you need to put in, because
Hmm.
there's not many different assets to put in. Uh, on the other side, it doesn't look so good because the valley will just be claustrophobic when you can't move around, right?
Right.
So the 8 by 8 kilometers is, I think, it's the sweet spot of the dark side of the farming sim engine, because because the terrain, it ranges from the bottom of the valley to the top
Hmm.
is over 600 meters in elevation difference. That's a
Wow.
lot already in farming sim terms. Um, but you also have this downside that when the scale of the map increases, the density of the terrain also decreases. So in the height map, which drives the elevation changes in the
Hmm.
map, 1 pixel equals 2 by 2 meters in game.
Yeah.
So let that sink in a little bit. Um, so when you're used to in game to change the farm or whatever, make a road or a slope, like to fill things in,
Hmm.
that's really good density in the default maps.
Yeah.
But in my map, if you try to do the same, you get sort of these sawtooth shaped edges. That's actually the polygons you see, which is forming the terrain. So it can look a bit rough. Let's put it at that. it,
Sure.
it looks like an unfinished map or an unfinished game,
Mm,
unless I do a lot of trickery and go outside the box and um, make Rennebu a little less uh, replica, if that makes sense.
right.
I need to make up the terrain a little bit here and there to make up for that sawtooth um, terrain.
Right. That's
I,
like
I feel I just talked out of the question. I forgot all the questions you had.
my question was, I guess, oh man, I think I forgot too, but that was really good. I remember I wanted to ask was, well, I just wanted to bring something up. I remember what I wanted to bring up is another impressive portion of your map is not, you've talked a lot about like the terrain and the environment, but another impressive portion of your map is how true it is to the real life location and how many custom assets you're using. A lot of people rely on pre-made assets, buildings that exist, things that we know, but you sort of been bent on making your own things and making buildings and locations more true to their real life counterparts. Like you were talking earlier about modeling and texturing buildings. That's been a huge time consumer for what you're doing because you're making this location true unto itself, and you've been avoiding using pre-made assets way more than a lot of other map makers do.
Yeah, I think it's kind of twofold as well because I know how to model and texture.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be stupid not to uh, leverage that. But I'm also seeing that the existing buildings are too southern or Eastern European. They don't fit the look in Norway or this area specifically.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also about size because I get a feeling that Farming Simulator is very industrial or very um, big farm oriented. So just a single shed in Farming Sim, like the default ones, they could fit a house in my map because they're so big.
Yeah, because
And that wouldn't look so good with both my terrain and these small plots where you have the farms itself. Like one shed would take up the entire parking lot.
right, right. No, it's and because and what you're doing, I've seen some small videos of it, and I'm hoping maybe I'll cut some. I'll either get my hands on this map or and record some video for you guys if he lets me, or I'll cut some videos from somewhere else. But everywhere is it's so narrow compared to what we're used to. You know, what you see a lot of is people using their biggest equipment and people, you know, making as much money as physically possible. But there's a point in your map where you can't use like 6 row anything bigger than 6 row equipment because it won't physically fit on the road that you're trying to drive up the hill with, right? A limiter
Yeah,
on your
correct.
a limiter on your map is just the environment itself and what you're allowed to drive. And I guess that's true to real life too, you know. A cult you don't like implements that are wider than your tractor, and that's true for a lot of Europe, but especially true for the sort of map you're making. I saw a video where a person was driving up a hill, up a gravel road onto a sort of flat area where a field was sitting on the side of a hill, and the field was big enough that sure you could use something a little bigger, but the road up to the field was really narrow, and you wouldn't want something much bigger than 3 or 4 meters. And that's just sort of true to real life, you know.
Yeah,
That's a
that's
yeah.
that's my goal really.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get that authentic feeling that this this dirt road doesn't fit anything bigger than this trailer, even though you obviously would like to have a bigger trailer to
Mm-hmm.
fill it up with grain and just drive as few trips as possible. But you need to make sure that you can actually get on and off that field. Um, so there are quite a few fields that are big and big enough to drive even the largest Lexion or Massey combines.
Sure.
But you'd probably need a helicopter to get in there. So you need to kind of pick your equipment wisely. It's not like that all over the place. I mean, you can drive along the main road, which is the typical widest kind of road, with one of the largest combines. That's no problem. But on the other side of the river, like I think it's on the west side of the river, there's only narrow roads all over. So pick your farm and equipment wisely, depending on how you like to play. Because I think this map is very sort of open-minded. You can play any way you like. Small equipment or large equipment. Yeah, it's really up to you. But you also have to consider the terrain itself, because many fields are flat or nearly flat, but there's also some where there are rolling hills within the field, and you can't just drive the biggest combines there because they would get stuck, at least until we get these flexing headers in 22.
Yeah.
So you need to be wise about that as well.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah,
Um,
that's true.
you
Okay.
had one other question, I think, or remark.
Yeah.
What was that?
I rem
Uh,
I I don't remember what that was. I'm so
no,
focused on what you're saying that I can't even remember what my thought was. I was gonna
oh, it's
mention
fine.
was gonna mention that your map is not only farm friendly, it's also very logger friendly because it's so dense with trees. And I think that's an aspect that gets overlooked a lot, and the side of the community that really cares about that is smaller. But if somebody's looking for an experience like that, your map definitely has that too.
Yeah, I think my map has sort of everything in more or less balanced way.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, there's about maybe just under 150,000 trees.
Sorry, I just had to laugh because that's so many trees. Did you place each of those individually, or did you have a way to batch place
You know
those?
what? You know what? When I started out making the map in 2019, I didn't know anything about scripts or what was possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I placed 10,000 trees by hand. Like you hold control and then you right click or whatever,
Yeah.
to place trees individually.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. And then I found out, oh man, I've calculated the scale of the map wrong.
Oh.
I spent like 1 month, I think, before I noticed that, oh crap, the map is almost 1 kilometer too wide in both directions. No wonder it felt so large and spacious. And that's oh man, that was almost the death of this map.
I'm
And then
sure.
I restarted making the map, and I found this uh, weird script that would say, just like you can make field dimensions, you set out transform groups, and it sort of made a huge polygon with many points,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
it would spawn trees within that selection.
Oh,
And
okay.
and but the trees were floating, so I had to find another script that pushed them to the terrain, so they
Mm-hmm.
would follow the terrain contours. But it was such a slow thing to do, and it was very little randomization in scale or rotation, etc.
Right.
Happily, I found found the script I'm using today, which lets you paint an info layer, so you see directly on the terrain where you paint stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
then you save the map, and this is stored into an image or whatever, and then you run the script. So then it places all the trees or rocks, or you could place houses as well if you like to, within a transform group with a specific hierarchy.
Wow.
You
Okay.
run the script, and
Mm-hmm.
bam, everything will be spawned within the area you just painted. So this way, I can easily paint an area and fill it with 50,000 trees in one go.
Right. That's
And that
nuts.
saved me from going nuts.
I'm sure. Yeah. That definitely. That definitely, and just for reference, for like people thinking about it, you started out with a 2x2, then you went 4x4, and then you went 8x8. Every time you do that, you're not doubling the area of the map, you're quadrupling the area of the map, right? Because four
Oh
by
yeah.
four is 16, 8x8 is 64, right? So when you say, "Oh, I'm going from a 4x4 to an 8x8," that's not a small change. You're quadrupling the amount of work you have to do.
Yeah, it's it's kind of different than a small map. You can say that.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing is the technical aspect of, okay, now you have more things to do and you need to fill in with more assets and paint more fields and ground textures and whatnot. But the engine becomes a lot slower to work with as well, or the editor. Um, so when I look at MRG painting his foliage and textures, ground textures on streaming, I get so envious of his performance because his map is a lot smaller than mine.
Mm-hmm.
He has virtually no lagging. Like it looks like hot knife through butter. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it just melts through.
Yeah.
But when I'm going to do the same, I kid you not, it's like 2 FPS. So it's a lot of waiting and guessing and getting known or get to know the tools, how they work when you are dragging your mouse across the screen in 2 FPS.
Yeah.
So it's a bit different. So be wary of that. I hope some things will change with FS22 and the new engine. Perhaps we'll get some performance boost. I don't know.
Right. They've been
Crossing
promising some.
fingers.
They've been promising some performance boosts, and hopefully that kind of helps what you're doing.
Yeah, I
So,
wish.
yeah. How do you see this map with FS19 and FS22? Do you see you getting this map to a playable state that you want to release for 19, or are you kind of already shifting towards I'm going to make this a 22 release, or are you just going to finish it for 19 on your own time?
Well, it's playable right now.
Okay.
I have a few testers who's been helping me to iron out things.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, we will release it for Farming Sim 22.
Okay.
And that's some technical reasons for that. One being there's 150,000 threes. That takes a lot of render power. But the
Yeah.
engine doesn't really scale that well on newer equipment. So I have a 3090 and a Threadripper CPU.
Yeah.
But they are basically idling at maybe 12-15%, and I still get a maximum of 60 FPS. Sometimes it dips under,
Huh.
depending on the direction I look into, because there's so many trees and the landscape has to be rendered for 8 kilometers as well. So
Yeah.
you can imagine there's a lot of improvement for performance, and I think Farming Sim 22 will get us there. So that's one thing. The
Mm-hmm.
other is um, the production chains. What I've
Yeah.
heard so far is production chains can help you do things that you wouldn't be able to unless you did it through a script. And a script sort of eliminates the option for console players.
Right.
I don't know enough about console and farming sim in that matter, but I do know that scripts is a big no-no if you want to launch the map on a console.
Yeah.
So production chains will solve a lot of that. So the one and biggest reason why I am waiting for production chains is in Rennebu, there's, as far as I know, only 2 farms out of, I don't know, 50, 80 farms that has a flat bunker silo like you're used to in default farming sim.
Oh, right.
All of the rest are so-called silos or tower silos or whatever you want to call it. So they are top fed. You either back into the barn and tip the entire trailer into the silo, or there's a conveyor system and some sort of distribution that evens it out, so you don't have to go into there with a fork and manually level it.
Mm-hmm.
And that silo system can't be done unless you make a script. So there
Mm.
are some mods on ModHub that does what I need, but I really don't want to rely on scripts and trickery, since this is hopefully possible with production chains. At least it will make it easier for me to make it happen, as far as I've gathered.
Oh,
So
okay.
the idea is when you tip the grass into the silo, it will automatically start fermenting. Like you wouldn't have to cover it up,
Yeah.
but it will slowly become usable silage.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the way to go.
Right. And yeah, I know some mappers do that with Global Company and other tools. Let them do that, but if you really want to do it without scripts, yeah, that's hopefully 22 has tools for that, and you can kind of adapt their production chain system to do that sort of stuff. And that's going to be really
Yeah.
cool too, because production chains could open up a lot of options for your map. You know, you could have a wood shop or this thing or that thing scattered around, and it would really make the size of the map and all the little buildings even more useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I was super thrilled when I learned about the production chains because uh, it adds so much depth to the game itself. Because I've honestly been a little bit bored of just grinding for more money to get better equipment to sort of get the chores done faster.
Right.
Uh, so when you add all these aspects, like the bakery, there is a bakery in Rennebu, which is sort of open for the community. So there's no one baking there, but you can rent the place to have sort of industrial type ovens and other equipment. So you can go there and bake big stuff for Christmas or whatever. And that's where I've planned the bakery to be in my map. So you bring flour and sugar and whatever from the mill
Mm-hmm.
to the bakery, do whatever, and then you can bring it to the grocery store to sell it there, just like you would with milk or flour in general. But also now you can bring bread and whatever cakes or I don't know what's possible really, but yeah, that's my idea.
That's
And I think
amazing.
same thing goes for the carpentry where you will deliver lumber.
Mm-hmm.
When I learned that the carpentry can actually make furniture
Mm-hmm.
and other things, oh man, I was celebrating so big because that gives uh, such a big extra thing to lumber. Like you're not grinding lumber, you're actually selling it, and it will be a product that you can sell somewhere. I don't know where yet, but you can sort of have a huge chain of events. I can imagine a multiplayer game where someone is really good with the harvester and someone likes to drive the forwarder, and then someone comes with a big truck and brings a bulk load to the carpentry.
Yeah.
And so maybe they take that further to wherever they can sell it. So just this thing alone can have three people work together and all of them can do what they love the most instead of doing it all by themselves and they hate the other two parts of the chain perhaps.
Yeah. No, it adds so much depth. It adds so much potential. Absolutely. It's going to be a really cool thing for map makers and especially for your map too. So, when you were making this map, when you were making this area, did you do a lot of, driving around the area and sort of stopping places or taking pictures or videos to kind of ensure you knew exactly what was going on, or did you get enough of that information from like Google Maps, or do you just remember it all? How was how did the process of translating this place from real world into the game go as far as making sure things were right and knowing exactly what was where?
I started with the height data. So there's a government-driven site, so everything is public domain, so
Mm-hmm.
anyone can download the data. So I downloaded data that covers the area I wanted, uh, and this is crazy. They have flown over Norway with a plane and LiDAR scan it all. So
Oh.
the data is 25 centimeters per pixel, and that is just outrageously dense. I
Yeah.
can't, yeah, mind blown. And to think that I'm downscaling it to 2 by 2 meters per pixel is
Yeah,
just
it's so
it's a
sad.
bit sad. Anyway, that data contains all I needed to see farms and roads and forest access roads. Like I've seen and learned so many roads I never knew existed because of
Mm.
that high data.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. Um, and I live about an 8 hour drive from Rennebu,
Okay.
uh, with my wife and 2 kids and all that. So I'm not there as often. But the times I've been there for holidays or funerals or summer vacation, I've always taken a camera. And my father has a drone, so I've taken that as well.
Oh, okay.
So I have hours of drone footage just circling around farms and flying across the valley and sort of to gather uh, data. But in the first flight I did with a drone, I actually had planned that video I posted 1 year ago. So I knew more or less what I wanted to present, but I had no idea how I would edit it and all.
Right.
And then it struck me, can I use this footage for photogrammetry? Can I sort of like get some rough models out of this? And it really worked well. Well, the models are very rough, like you
Right.
wouldn't be able to put them in game and it would look nice, but they gave me a sense of width and depth that I wouldn't be able to understand just from a single photo. Um,
Yeah.
I've tried that as well. So part of my research has been the photogrammetry stuff, where I literally make a 3D model of a farm, and it looks really good with the textures and all that, but it doesn't hold up for in-game.
Mm.
So I model on top of that, like
Huh.
it's just a box, like a house or a barn. It's just a box with a with a roof,
Mm-hmm.
and from there you add the details for windows and doors and the overhangs on the roof, etc.
Gotcha.
But if I didn't have that photogrammetry data, I would be I would be nowhere near as close to completion as I am now. Because then I would have to look for a reference, like what car is that? And I would have to like squint and go real close to the screen and like, oh, it's a Prius. But how tall is that Prius? And how many Priuses can you stack on top to get to the roof? You know?
Yeah.
It's all guesswork and it wouldn't really I don't think it would be as good as it could be with photogrammetry.
That's awesome. Can you explain what photogrammetry is when you talk about that?
Yeah, of course. Photogrammetry is the art and science of putting many images together, where you have a series of images circling around or taking along a planar surface,
Mm-hmm.
and the computer stitches this together and knows the differences and knows where the similarities are. So it can look at, well, it doesn't understand what a roof is or a window is, but it sees from image to image, it sees the same pattern and sort of connects the dots.
Mm.
So in the end, it makes a 3D model based on what you've taken a photo of or a series of photos.
Wow, that's really cool. That's super awesome. Takes a lot of the guesswork out of things, and you can at least, you at least know the general shape, and sometimes that's half the battle.
Yeah, that's you would think even a house is easy to model just looking at it, but if you don't know the scale, anything is hard.
Right. That's totally true. So, what's your software suite that you kind of use when you're doing this?
Oh, it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mainly use Modo for 3D modeling,
Okay.
and I use Rhizome UV for anything UV mapping because it's just so fast and does what I need in a in way fewer clicks than anything else I've tried.
Okay.
For textures, I mainly use Substance Designer. Um, I have I have gotten some textures from Megascans and some from textures.com, and then I bring it into Substance Designer to make the what's it called, like the diffuse, the specular, and the normal map uh, that Giant's editor requires, because the specular and the normal map are packed with different information.
Yes. Yeah. There are different layers in them.
So yeah, so Substance Designer really helps on that. You can split and merge and whatever you like. So it's really a one-click kind of thing once you have the textures downloaded. But I also use it to make color variations. So I can have one siding plank texture, and it's got all of these nice little variations in the colors, and then I can pick values from those colors or the grayscale of it, and maybe make it, instead of red, I can make it green, and I can make it green with flaking paint or whatever. Really easy. And then I have Substance Painter, which I use for baking AO, or ambient occlusion, and dirt and wear and moss and whatever I need.
That's what I use too.
Yeah, exactly. So you know the drill. Yeah, what else is there?
Do you use
Blender.
Blender at all?
Uh, I have started to do it because FBX exports and then into the editor is just such a pain. So I started using Blender to convert FBX, then assign all the textures to the materials, and export i3D from that
Gotcha.
with the script from Stjerneidioten. I don't know if he's Norwegian or Swedish or Danish, but the name is kind of funny.
Yeah.
He's like the prime idiot. That's what it means.
Huh. Interesting. So yeah, that's so how long have you been working on it, and what do you estimate? Of course, subject to change constantly. Who knows? But how much longer do you think it's gonna take?
Oh, well, I started working on it in October 2019,
Okay.
and it's been on and off since then. For some periods, I've not worked on it at all because I'm so fed up with it.
Right.
You know, you
Yeah.
sort of need some other impulses. Um, right now, I still have like maybe 60, 70 buildings left to do. So I'm not gonna get done for November 22nd.
No.
I can tell you that.
Yeah. Oh
But
man.
I hope I will be able to push a version maybe before Christmas. I'm not making any promises. This is
No.
this
Of
is
course
just
not.
me pointing straight up the interior and guessing. I have no idea really.
Yeah.
But Easter next year, the late, because
Okay.
I want to get done with it too. You know, I'm getting tired of it, but
Right.
I really
Yeah.
want to do it as good as I can.
Of course. So yeah, with somebody that's learned so much about mapping like you have, you know, started, learning that from almost the ground up as far as like actually working in the engine goes. What kind of, to aspiring mappers, people that want to start doing things, what kind of suggestions would you give, tips you would have, advice you would say?
One, start small. Don't bite over more than you can chew, because it gets real gritty real fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, just stay small within the default size if you can, because there's so many technical aspects that will make you insecure about what you're doing, and you will have to ask around, and people aren't always as helpful. I learned, and that's also part of why it's taken so much time, because I've struggled with a question for maybe a month, and then someone helps me, and then I can continue. So start small.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is perhaps don't make a real world location unless you really know technically what you're doing, because measurements can get really tricky real fast. If something is off just by a few meters, or I don't know, you will quickly see that things aren't lining up, and you might not be aware of where the error is. So if you worked on something for a lot of time, and when you're almost done and you notice that, oh, this road isn't 2 kilometers, it's really 4,
Oh.
then you mess up, and that will discourage anyone, I think. So perhaps just start to learn the tools, learn how to make rolling hills and mountains and whatnot, but don't put too much effort into it while learning the tools.
Huh.
I
That's
think when
yeah.
you I think when you know the tools, it's easier to know where the limits of your own talent is,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yes. That totally
Because when
makes
you know
sense.
the tools technically, there's only talent that can stop you.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. You know what's possible and what's not, and who knows where you could go. So I got one more question, sort of. So you've been working on this for a while, and I'm sure you've come up with other ideas of other projects you have or want to do, but you've probably put them off because you need to make sure this gets done. Do you have any of those? Do you have any ideas of what Ola is up to next? What he might be doing?
Yeah, I have a few other ideas, both for maps and other mods.
Mm-hmm.
In Norway, there's a brand called Orkel. They are not very famous abroad, I think, maybe in Europe, but in Norway, a lot of Norwegian farmers have Orkel trailers, which I already have on the mod hub. But there's also balers. So I've talked with Orkel, and I've been given access to CAD files. So
Wow.
I have a few balers that I'd really like to make.
Mm-hmm.
Balers I've grown up with, which we had on the farm,
Mm-hmm.
and balers I know my dad would die to have,
Yeah.
and balers I've only seen on videos or photos. I've never seen in real life, and but they're sort of iconic to both the area in general of Rennebu, but also in Norway. I've seen them a lot of places. So it's kind of a patriotism thing,
You
I
gotcha.
guess.
Do those CAD models translate in any way to? Well, I'm not sure when you say CAD if you mean I'm an engineer by trade, so I kind of know what you're talking about. I don't know if you mean 2D or 3D documents, maybe some 3D models. I don't know if those translate in any way to Farming Simulator, or do they just give you a good idea of the dimensions and the sizes and the little details you should look out for?
Well, it's funny you should mention 2D, because I asked whether they had some really old CAD drawings,
Mm-hmm.
and they looked back in the archives and found it's the oldest CAD file they have from, I think, 93 or something,
Yeah.
and it's all 2D drawings. But I have a software that translated that to 3D. Well, some parts of it. So that's just a loading wagon. Um, but the balers are full 3D. They are like, I think the only thing that's missing is cabling and
Mm.
chains.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so every gear and nut and bolt is there.
Right.
It's just too much for the game to handle. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can strip those.
Yeah.
But the most important parts are those visible on the outside, like the panels,
Yep.
um, the molded panels, and the frame and wheels and such. So I can take that and convert it from a CAD solid or surface, or what you want to call it,
Yeah.
to polygons.
Mm-hmm.
But it requires quite a lot of cleanup, so the poly count isn't too much, and that there's uh, yeah, so everything fits together and is one piece instead of many fragments of pieces.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense.
So
Because
that's not a one-click solution. It takes a lot of hours to
hmm
to get
because
that done, but
you have to
I'm
depolymerize
getting
it.
there.
Yeah, it's a whole process. Definitely
Yeah.
too much. That would be too much in just one go. So, all right, well, that's about an hour. So I wanted to say thank you for joining us today. I could have kept talking to you forever, but I got to wrap this up, I guess, sooner or later. Maybe we'll do this again sometime when you're farther along or when it's released. You're a very
Sure.
knowledgeable guy. You're very fun to talk to, kind of different than my normal guests, so it's sweet. If people want to see what you're doing, know what you're up to, get your work, where can they find you?
I tried to make a Facebook page. I don't know how successful it is, but it's there. I can send you the link after so you can
Sure.
talk it out.
Yep.
Otherwise, I'm on different Discords like NMC, those who make some forestry equipment. I'm on Pharmacop, um, Scroft, Marella. I'm on the official farming simulator, Frontier Design. I'm on a lot of different Discords, really.
Yeah.
So I drop my little screenshots now and then on several of those,
Mm-hmm.
just like I do on Facebook as well.
Cool. That's awesome. I hope people will go look him up, go get his stuff. An incredible guy, a great guy to have in our community. As for me, my name is Rooster. You can find my modding page on facebook.com/roostermods. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. I'm going to continue to seek out new guests and dig up new stories of different people in this community because there's so many people that have so many little stories and backgrounds and things they know and do. It's too good to not figure it out and get it out to the people. So subscribe here. Find me on Rooster Mods. And yeah, I guess that's it. So thanks for watching, everybody. Signing off.